Okay, so a little bit of progress here on the A&L 91 World's prototype car, but more important than the structural progress, I'm starting to get a few more clues as to which one of these chassis was actually raced at the 91 Worlds. So if I take this out, we have this chassis, which is a long wheelbase chassis just like this one, and we have this upper deck, that upper deck, and this upper deck. Okay, and then we have this chassis, which is a short wheelbase chassis. We know this was not used because if you look at the pictures of the A&L car at the 91 Worlds, it had this kind of upper deck with the steering rack underneath this window here and not directly aligned to this brace. Okay, so it's one of these two, or it could be the long wheelbase chassis that Adam Lane has. Adam is Daryl Lane's son, and he has one of these chassis as well. And so I've been talking to him, and we've been taking pictures of the parts that we have and trying to see what goes where. And if you look really, really closely at the one picture that's of any reasonable resolution of the prototype car in 1991, you'll see a very slight marking on the upper deck that corresponds to this little mark right here. It looks like some kind of a scratch or nick or something of the upper deck. This is the only upper deck that has that. Okay, so that's one telltale sign that, okay, maybe this was the exact upper deck used. Then as for the actual chassis itself, we were looking for wear marks on the chassis for where the batteries might have been, because the way the batteries were mounted was you had, trying to remember, you had 3 batteries going lengthwise this way inside one battery cup. It had one battery cup toward the front. The rear was open, and then you had kind of a saddle arrangement of batteries going this way. Okay, so the long way going the length of the chassis, and then the speed control back here underneath the upper deck. So you would expect to see, if they were taking batteries in and out a lot, maybe some kinds of wear marks right around here or so, slightly in front of and or behind these posts here. And I looked on both of these chassis, and you can see there, it's like right about here, you see a bit of a wear mark. Okay, if I just shine the light just right on it, you see it right there. And there's a more subtle one that's also further down on this side. So that indicates that this certainly was a used chassis. This chassis does have a wear mark, but it's a bit closer to the center post. And in the picture for this car, I know I'm getting into too much detail here, but that battery was aligned in such a way so that this line here would fall in front of this post. Okay, so this was not used at the 91 Worlds. This one probably was. And then Adam sent me pictures of his version, the chassis he has, and it doesn't have those marks. So it does look like this lower deck and this upper deck were used at the 91 Worlds. Okay, great. Then we get into some finer details about the body mount and the shock tower. This body mount is a unique body mount because the other mounts that I have don't have this kind of a shape. They have more of a dome shape. And again, if you look at the picture, this is the one that was used. Okay, good. Then you try to look at the shock tower. The problem with that one image is that the angle of the picture doesn't give you too much information about the tower. What you can tell is that the top surface of the tower is flush. It does not have like an indentation like this or anything like that. Perfectly flush. And of all the towers I have, I only have 2 that are flush like this. This one, and then another one that doesn't have any holes down here. So I do believe this was the actual tower used in the 91 Worlds. Okay, great. So that's all sorted out. But there's more to the story than that, because as I keep digging deeper and deeper into this car, just from the images and how that differs or compares to what I see here, I'm seeing a story. So the lower deck in the image taken from 1991 doesn't have these cutouts, which suggests to me that this was a development car, the car that was, which would make sense because it was a prototype car. So Chris Alec raced it at the 91 Worlds. And I'd have to assume that after that event, he probably made some modifications to it maybe made some more cutouts in the lower deck, and also thinned down this brace here. If you look at the original picture, this brace was wider. So he must have thinned this down and then made other braces that are exactly the same type with a thinned down upper brace, okay? And then basically tore this whole thing apart and made something new, which was probably this guy, the shorter wheelbase model, and moved some of his parts like the shocks and the turnbuckles and so forth to that car. Okay, so the actual car that was raced at that event wasn't even kept in one piece. Which makes sense if it's a development car and you're experimenting with different parts and stuff, and the car didn't finish on the podium at the World, so why would you have any reason to like put it in a museum or anything like that? Like Team Associated does that a lot with their World's winning cars. So okay, that makes sense. But I'm glad we've pieced together enough stuff here to pretty strongly suggest this is the actual car. The only thing that's missing are the correct suspension arms. So all of the arms that I have this kind of a hole arrangement for the front and the rear arms. And if you look at the pictures, the hole arrangement on the arms is different. They don't look like this. You have a bunch of holes that are kind of in line. Like in the front, you'd have like 3 holes that are in line, and this one has 1 offset hole. So I don't have those in these boxes or anything. I think Adam may have a few, but not a complete set. So that also suggests, okay, maybe one of those arms broke, and then Chris made a newer set of arms with a new cut as part of the development process for this car, and those ended up being sort of the let's call it the final version of the arms, because there were several of these kinds of arms, but a very limited number of the original arms. So these arms were not used in the 91 Worlds, but they're as good as I can go because the original set doesn't exist anymore. It's a completely different type of cut. Okay, so that's kind of where I am at this point. I haven't made as much structural progress on this car as I would like to. It's just a question of time, really. But I have some time tonight, so I'm going to try to put more of the front suspension together here, try to get that all sorted out. I did notice that the white ball cups that are on this right now were not used in the 91 Worlds. If I'm trying to be faithful to a 91 build, that all had black ball cups. And I believe on the steering turnbuckles, those actually had the Traxxas captured ball ends, or kind of they're a bit like this. So these were used on the steering links on the 91 car. So now I have to kind of figure out whether or not I want to use the, whichever white ones I have left, or just go to the all black associated ball cup parts. These did not come with the car. These are separate. So it's kind of a judgment call as to whether I want to use only the parts that came with the car when I bought it, or if I want to import parts from, other spares that I have to complete the look as close as I can. So I haven't completely made a decision about that yet. I am leaning toward using these black ball cups. I know it's a minor detail, but again, I want to try to make this as close as possible to the original build as possible. Even though the original parts themselves were already modified after the Worlds. So that's kind of it's a really interesting story to me there. That's basically it. I think since the last build, I completed the rear drivetrain. I put the A&L gearbox in, the lethal weapon transmission, and I just had to clean this out and rebuild the diff. Pretty easy to do. The belt was in fine condition. I didn't have to replace the belt or anything. I took the spur gear that was on this guy and I just threw it on here. Okay. And the electronics are the next thing to sort out. I know that he used a Novak M1C, which I have here. And the servo, when I talked to Chris Alec, he said he was running with, what was it? I think Futaba at the time. So it was probably this servo here, so I just have to move it back to this chassis. And he was running Peak motors. So there is a Peak motor on the back of this car. I don't know if that was the exact motor that was used at the Worlds. Maybe, maybe not. You know, Chris doesn't remember exactly which model and which wind was used. So I'm just going to take that motor and throw it in here, and that's, you know, as close as I can get. And that's kind of it for now. Once I finish this up, of course, there is the reproduction kit to build. And I know that Adam Lane has already built this, or is building one of these to run at the Vintage Off-Road Nationals, and it looks really beautiful. So I am definitely way behind him on that part. But, you know, at some point I will get this done. Maybe I'll have a chance to run it next year or something. So anyway, that's where I am on this build, and thanks for watching.